Welcome back, everybody, and this is another episode for the Australian DeFi Association podcast. This is also going to be broadcast on our other channels. As you're aware, we're doing something new with the Emerging Tech Taskforce, so we'll also see the video there. We've got an amazing bunch of people in the room today, some of whom have flown in to be here. We are all in different parts of Sydney right now, but we come together online to talk about some very important topics about writing, publishing, and reading, and just how technology helps with that. My name is Mark. I'll be your host today, but let's go around the room. And starting off with Lisa, we're interviewing and talking about Fableration. Could you give us a quick intro on who you are and what you're doing?
Yeah, hey everyone, I'm Lisa Wade. I am at the moment representing a really brilliant new startup called Fableration as one of my projects, and I'm also co-chair of DECA. And I guess I've been building in this space for quite a long time now. A few things like Project Atom, central bank digital currencies, Project Carbon, and some other real world asset tokenization projects like tokenizing a few funds and a real world asset tokenization fund in and of itself. So I'm pretty excited to talk about Fableration and, you know, the concepts of payments and AI in general. And I'll leave it there for now.
Fantastic. Over to you, Victoria.
Good morning, Mark. Good morning, everyone. I'm Victoria. I've been working with payments and identity for about 25 years now. I'm a partner at ID Partners, and it really just does what it says on the tin. We partner with organizations to help them understand and implement identity technologies.
Fantastic. And over to you, David. You're dialing in from a hotel. It looks like a space hotel.
That's because it's more interesting than the actual hotel, which is in Sydney. I'm Dave Birch. I'm an author, advisor, and commentator on digital financial services. Victoria and I, our last book, Money in the Metaverse, was published last year, and we're working together on a new book called Will Robots Need Passports, that's looking at the future of agentic commerce.
Fantastic, and great titles there. We'll have to share the links in the show notes here below, so I'll grab those from you later. But let's get back to Fableration. And Lisa, what can you tell us about a lot of projects we're seeing coming to life, whether it is in blockchain or AI and this whole kind of emerging tech space? They're trying to solve problems that we have in the current world. What are those problems, and what is Fableration doing?
Yeah, so I think the thing that excited me most about jumping on this project was that it actually has a wicked problem to solve. And a fun fact about me that most people don't know is I actually have a graduate diploma in creative writing. And, you know, someone asked me on a panel the other day, what did you want to be when you were, before you wanted to be anything? And I said, I wanted to win Wimbledon, but I also think I wanted to be an author. And I've never really had that opportunity because I've always had this perception that you can't make money out of it. And so I worked in finance, and pretty sure I'm convinced that you can't make money out of being a writer. And Fableration is a project that is designed to solve that wicked problem via using tokenomics and using the power of AI just to streamline some processes to bring more economic advantage back to the writers. And I'll be really simple about it. It pays writers instantly, and then readers can be rewarded for reading. So it brings back sort of the power of reading and acknowledges that there is no writing without reading. And I just think it's a really beautiful project. We're not disintermediating publishing, we're including publishers. It's B2B. And one of the things I'm bringing is my Bendigo background, so that we look after bookstores, because all of the bookstores we've been to, and maybe it's not something we talk about in the technology podcast. However, all of the bookstores I have been to on the ground are in financial distress. And so I'm on a little bit of a mission to make sure the bookstores are included via things like payment rails, where we can Web 2, Web 3, bring real world with like credit cards and rewards into the bookstores. And David Birch might remember book tokens from there you go. Back in the day in England, and you know, potentially things like book tokens that are only redeemable, a Fableration book token only redeemable in a local bookstore, or creative ideas like that. And I don't want my developers to have heart attacks by me dropping ideas like that into podcasts.
Well, they sound like promises now that we have to develop it,
Oh
guys.
no,
And-
product roadmap just exploded.
but we live in a world of AI. Like, it should be, it's not as hard as it used to be to develop. We know that firsthand, and would love to see, ideas that come from the community added to it. Victoria and David, like, how did you guys hear about Fableration? Victoria, maybe over to you.
Yeah, I think we've known Lisa a long time, and in fact, some of Lisa's ideas about atomic settlement feature in Money in the Metaverse, which Dave and I wrote. So we see Lisa as a thought leader in this space. But when Lisa was telling me about Fableration, it really struck me as an idea that has really come to fruition at the right time. It reminded me of this project that actually my brother had in California. He started in 2002, and it was a very similar idea. Of course, there was no blockchain then. There were no smartphones. There wasn't instant payment settlement, but his idea was to bring together creative artists of songs, of music, and their audience, very similar to shorten the discovery life cycle, think up different types of rewards. And so what I'm really excited about with Fableration is, of course, the tech infrastructure is so different now. The discovery will be different, the user experience will be different. So I'm really excited to see it.
Fantastic. And over to you, David. How did you hear about all of this?
Some of the analysis of the problems goes back to the earliest days of the internet, and people have been looking at different ways of monetizing content, different kinds of content in different ways, and trying to find new ways to sort of bring some dynamic to that. And in the early days, but which I mean, before blockchains and things, in those days there was a lot of focus on micropayments, and was there some way that creators could be rewarded directly? I remember a long time ago, I wrote this piece called The Red Button, and I said, imagine if there was a red button on the keyboard, which just meant, pay this guy a quarter, or, pay this guy $1 or whatever. As a thought experiment, that would lead to a very different kind of web, a web that wasn't the advertising dominated model that we have now, and the large gated communities we have now. So, ideologically, I've long thought it would be better for everybody if there were better ways for creators to monetize what they're doing. But for a variety of reasons, there were different limitations on that. And I think right now there are kind of three things coming together which sort of bring this back alive again. And I apologize if this sounds like a very technical analysis, but this is my sort of reaction on it. So the first is what was called the sort of computation problem. In other words, it was hard to get people to pay for content with using some kind of micropayments because it was too complicated for people to work out whether they wanted to make the money. So, like, I could go to Netflix and suppose it was going to cost me $1 to look at anything on Netflix, right? Would I pay the $1 to look at the stuff that I wanted to look at, or would I carry on paying the $19 a month? And in a lot of cases, I'll carry on paying the $19 a month because I just can't work out, and then if I actually look through the records, I'd discover, oh, actually, I only looked at 12 things last month. I'd have been better off paying $1 a time. But I can't do that because I'm a normal person with other things to do. But bots don't have other things to do. So bringing AI in to manage the computation problem shifts the balance. The second thing is, I'm not touching on the creative stuff that Vic was talking about, but the technical mechanisms for affecting that have begun to change. And, you've seen a lot of talk recently about AI to AI payments, the kind of stuff that we're looking at the moment. And you see things like stable coins in that space, which are changing some of the dynamics around that. So that's changed as well. And the third thing is, and I'd be pushed to prove this with a bar chart or a spreadsheet, but I think it's true. Mentally, we've gone past peak subscription. So there's a readiness now to explore other ways of paying for things, which possibly, 3-4 years ago, when people began to experiment with this stuff again, even though they thought it was a good idea, they just weren't quite ready for it yet. They were happy enough to sign up. I've just canceled my Paramount subscription. My Disney one will be the next to go. I'm just kind of sick of subscriptions. And I don't think I'm the only person. So basically there's three things that have changed. So the ideas that Vic was talking about, those ideas are still valid, but the technical landscape has shifted, which I think gives them another shot. And this, I think, gives energy to what Lisa is saying.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a timing to this. We could have had this tech here earlier, but if people weren't mentally ready to that third pillar, I think it would have been a lot harder. I think a lot more people now are seeing this as well. Even with AI, like we see a lot of these new tools coming out that you've just got to pay a little bit more for. It's like a death by 1,000 cuts. And people want to have just either something bespoke, something we are seeing in the AI space, or they're ready to just create their own thing.
Something different, Mark, we're in a doom spiral. The internet as it stands right now, you're looking at a situation where more than half of the content on the web right now is being produced by bots, and pretty much a substantial fraction of that is actually being consumed by bots. Like, advertisers are upset because it's bots that are reading the adverts, not people. People are upset because they're reading, AI generated rubbish instead of anything interesting. If we don't do something new, this is just going to spiral down. You're going to end up with an internet which is bots writing rubbish for other bots. I don't know. Maybe that would be good. Maybe we could go and do something else instead, like read a book.
In the movie Wall-E, the Earth was filled with trash and we had to go to space. But that trash didn't necessarily have to be physical trash, to your point, David. It could be this mental trash that's out there. And going back to Fableration, Lisa and Victoria, Victoria, you mentioned this whole idea that your brother had out in the early 2000s and bringing something together. And Lisa, I guess both of you to comment on this, like, how can Fableration do better than, we've had these great ideas, but now we are bringing the tech together. How do things change now?
Well, I really think it's about, I think one of the things we do when we're developing Web3 is we're not listening to what people actually want. And I think it's making sure that I call it blockchain for good, which is really how do we leverage all these tools that could be used for good and bring them together and at the same time listen to the people. So I've been out there, I've been having so much fun going and talking to writers and bookstores and really listening, and publishers as well, and really listening to the problems. And so what we're hoping is that the beta version that we come out with solves the first wicked problem, which is the economics in the industry. So not even publishers are really making any money, and bringing that advantage back and building some algorithms around paying authors up front.
Can I just ask Lisa, and I'm not asking this just to be a dick. I mean, that I am a dick. I don't need to prove that. But it's not at all obvious to me that publishers need to be in this loop. I mean, publishers are essentially a kind of almost Victorian solution to the problem of distribution. And when I published my last book, we were given the option of going. We were with London Publishing Partnership, who I love. And we were given the option of going to one of the bigger publishers. And I looked on LinkedIn, and I have more followers than they do on LinkedIn. The long tail does not serve the vast majority of orders. I'm not J.K. Rowling. They're not going to put my book in every shop window in every airport. So the question is, what exactly is the publisher going to do that we can't do better ourselves? So I need to divide publishers in two. Publishers have a role here.
Yes, I think I'm going to divide publishers in two. So I think what you're talking about are the big, I won't name any, no blame, no shame. I think you're talking about the big end of town, and I guess I've been hanging out in the small end of town with the indie publishers, and they seem to me to be providing a service to their authors, and seem to really care about their authors. And I think there's sort of this, and then there's the economics of how to sell a book. They can help their authors get something published and get it out there. And then they also, like you say, don't have the followers, and they can't get the book sold because there is just this disadvantage in the industry, even in advertising on Amazon, or you walk into a bookstore because of the way the sale and return works. That people are having, if you're not, J.K. Rowling's or Lee Child, it's very difficult to get that shelf space and get your book sold. And so what we're looking to do is use the AI to create genuine search results. So if you come in and you say, I feel like I'm in a good mood and I want to read something, I'm in a bad mood and I want to read something happy, it will bring up genuine happy books, not what you're getting now, which is you walk into a bookstore and you're seeing all of the bestsellers. And then you go to Amazon and you do the same search and you're just getting all of the books they want to sell you come up, whether you say you're happy, sad, or, want to read a fantasy or a fiction or a non-fiction. So what we're trying to do is create the genuine search and match results, and genuinely help those publishers be able to sell more books. And if an author wants to come to us directly, that's okay too. It's just we don't want to completely disintermediate the entire industry when there are some indie publishers out there that are really serving these writers, because a lot of writers do need help. And I guess the other point I would make that I've learned that I didn't see in the platform, that I think could actually be when you do a startup and it always ends up the one thing you didn't really expect is the magic superpower of it. And I think it's that marketing engine that we can create. The economics are fine. Pay people up front, pay them instantly, but 0 times 0 is 0. And if you get that instantly, it's never. If we can actually help people market their books and get seen, I think that in and of itself would be an amazing feature of a platform like this.
I agree with Lisa. I think, Dave, it would be unfair to say that our publisher didn't help us massively in terms of editing and positioning. So
they did a fantastic.
Lisa's spot on. The independent publishers play a huge role. I think the other thing that I'm really interested in is this idea of privacy that you get with some of the blockchain infrastructure. So maybe I'm the one with the history lessons, but if we go back even further than the beginning of the 2000s, if we go back to the 1800s, as a woman, I wouldn't have been able to publish as Victoria Richardson, famous Mary Ann Evans, or more famously as George Eliot, published what's considered to be the best British book ever published. And she wrote under the pseudonym of George Eliot because she didn't think that a female writer would be taken seriously. So that's a particular historical context. If we think about now, there are many reasons that people might legitimately want to write under a pseudonym for lots of good privacy reasons. And I think that having blockchain technology and the pseudonymity that affords and the privacy is really, really important aspect. And I think some people feel they can't write their story because of their political situation, or there are lots of situations that people aren't able to be public and open about. So providing a privacy layer around that and facilitating publishing I think that's a whole new opportunity as well.
Wait, so
Absolutely.
You don't think that Lord of the Rings was the best British novel ever published? That's weird.
Not my opinion, Dave. Yeah, middle mark.
Maybe we need top 5 here. Top 5.
Absolutely.
It'll be whoever wins the Fableration story competition. That will be the one that's going to be the best, right?
That will be the story of the year. That is right. Yes.
That's a great segue.
Everybody's got their entries coming in.
Yeah, let's talk about before we get into the tech, and I will go back to you, David, on that. But before we get into that, why don't we talk a little bit about the competition? We did have it as a video that's up on the ROS DeFi Association YouTube. You were at our previous in-person event, Lisa, to tell the great community, the hundreds that were there in the crowd, about it. But for those that may not have heard about this competition, what can you tell us?
Yeah, can I tell you a funny story first? That I'm trying to work out how to articulate it best to the market so that people can get educated about it. So just to answer Mark's question, sorry, we have 3 Bitcoin that a beautiful funder and co-creator has offered to raise awareness on the platform so that we can also get customer feedback by people using the platform, so we can actually build to what people want. Just a little beta test of the platform, and then we're going to road test features to develop the product roadmap. 3 Bitcoin. I've been trying to work out how to simplify, because there's 3 parts to it. There's a writer's prize, which actually you get your name embedded in the Bitcoin. We've worked out how to do that, which will basically is probably the most exciting thing, because that will immortalize you, right? Because it's immutable.
Monogram Bitcoin. I like that.
That's right. Yeah. And then the reader prize, it's 1 Bitcoin divided into 21. And we're working out the metrics on how to, do that prize, because we've got some feedback from writers. And then the third prize is for a hackathon, which we'll do with the Australian industry and hopefully make it global so that people can come in. We want to have the tech open source and be blockchain for good, as I said. So have a hackathon so that some of these features of the feedback that we get actually get co-created by the community, and we can have writers working with developers, and who knows what can happen then. We can promise all of these features, right, if we have this hackathon where the things that writers want are actually created. And so I think it's a really beautiful way to wrap the project together. So I put on my LinkedIn, we've got 3 Bitcoin to give away. I got all these comments about scams and that my LinkedIn had been hacked. One of the most senior women in Web3 and crypto actually one-on-one me. I've never spoken to her before. She, are you okay? I'm really concerned that this Bitcoin prize is a scam. I said, no, it's genuine. How can I word my LinkedIn post to sound genuine and not look like Fableration is a scam? So it's really interesting. I guess my secondary mission here is to say Bitcoin is good. And just when people start transacting in Bitcoin, why are even senior people in our own industry defaulting to a scam? I love the people that are concerned about my LinkedIn being hacked, but it's a really big eye-opener for me and a big concern of mine of like this, even our own industry is worried. So I want to say Bitcoin is good. It is not a scam. And hopefully we can have a secondary mission in this with the Bitcoiners prizes to, tell people that actually Bitcoin is currency and it's not bad.
And crypto is currency, and the tokens are, and payments as we have conversions. We had a private it was the Oz Investors Forum, and Arturo was there for the afternoon. I was there in the morning, but Arturo, my colleague in the Oz DeFi Association and my venture studio firm, Not Centralized, he asked the panel what their thoughts were on Bitcoin, because they're talking about all these other asset classes and what's happening with global macro. And not only was there no opinion, but there was it was laughed at a little bit on stage. Now, privately in the networking, people were talking about it and are interested, but it was curious to see that on stage, there's still a little bit of hesitancy amongst the family office, superannuation, and other kind of like institutions. And, we need to educate. That's the point, Lisa. Like, we need to tell the public and policymakers that there is more to this than what you just hear. I know that if it bleeds, it leads. That is great for news, but there is some truth. There's a lot of truth behind this. And just
maybe share my LinkedIn post. This is not a scam.
Yeah, exactly. Before we dive into the further stuff, and you can see Arturo there, he comes up on screen. Turn around, buddy, so that we can. There you go. Okay, cool. It's a good thing he's wearing clothes. No, we're not at home. So the thing that I wanted to just mention before we get into the technical stuff, Victoria, you mentioned the pseudonymity sort of thing with blockchain. That is great, and a lot of people do worry about that from the business community, because it's like, oh, well, everything's pseudonymous. We can figure out margins for businesses. But the thing is, we've got zero knowledge proofs. We can do more with this. Like, we have the benefit of having programmability, but we can also have confidentiality. So that's often a thing that we have heard initially being attacked when it comes to blockchain, that everything.
I think people don't understand it. You say pseudonymity and they hear anonymity, and they don't understand the difference between that. So I think it's, and I use that term very specifically, as you know. So I think it's to your point about education, it's really, really important to get the education right. And there's a piece of work I'm doing at the moment all around how you embed privacy by design principles in new forms of payment. And to your point, there are all sorts of zero knowledge proofs and ways that we can really think about making sure that only the information that someone needs to perform a transaction is presented in that transaction. And it probably boils right down to the area that Dave and I share and really passionate about, is digital identity. And it's good news now that especially in the Australian market, we've got the states issuing digitally verifiable credentials. And I think this is doing something really helpful. It will educate people that you can have a digital credential on your smartphone. All the public key cryptography is just below the hood. We have that with payment cards anyway. Like, no one worries, oh my goodness, where's my private key? How is it linked to my public key? That's all in the smart card. And we use that with payments every day. Mobile payments is taking that to the phone. And then I think it will, with the driving licenses, we will all get used to the fact that you present something, there's some digital, cryptography happening below, and then you get a really high assurance outcome. So I'm hopeful that we're in a transition phase, and identity will become a digital bearer instrument alongside payment.
It absolutely will, and Australia is definitely leading the charge with digital IDs, and I think this is all part of the education. The underlying tech will drive this. And speaking of the tech, David, I want to come back to you because, sorry, 1 second, I'll try that again. So speaking of the tech, back to you, David, to talk about tech aspects that, and let's, the realm of this Fableration project. What is it that you're seeing that is interesting from a blockchain perspective? We mentioned the other aspects there in the talk, but things like immutability. What else do you see that blockchain provides to all of this?
I mean, I think a lot of the action at the moment. By the way, I don't necessarily think that blockchains are the only way of doing these things. I mean, I think this is not the purpose of the discussion today, but I wouldn't want to leave people with that opinion. I think a lot of the interesting activity at the moment is in what people call the sort of level 2 stuff. So the idea is that you use the blockchain as the kind of anchor. You use the blockchain as essentially the security system underpinning the higher level activities, and then you have the more sophisticated stuff running at a higher level. Now, for something like if you take the example of the sort of payment thing, right? You've got Lightning trying to do that on the Bitcoin network, and you've got other things working beneath that. But there could be other things operating at that level. I mean, to take the example that's relevant to this, the thing about sort of reputation and reviewing, if those kind of things become ungameable, if those kind of things are managed by cryptography, they have a reality to them, which means some of the sort of the old kind of dreams about what would it look like to have a purely reputational economy, an economy that was based on the sort of quality of people's work and not, who they went to school with or this kind of thing. That becomes very interesting again. And I sort of think that there's some other interesting aspects to that as well, of course, because imagine if that's true. So suppose you've got the blockchain underpinning everything, you're working in a reputation economy, all the reviews are real, you can't log in as yourself and boost your own stuff and all this kind of, imagine all of that is sort of solved. So it's just the pure quality of the content which drives things forward. The history of your credentials over time, in other words, your reputation that's associated with things, becomes incredibly valuable. I mean, that's the way that you earn a living. That's the way that you move forward.
So can I ask a question? Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, so as a consequence, you can manage the kind of behavior in that space by managing the reputation. So if I do something bad, like let's say you don't know who I am, right? I'm Mr. X, okay? So Mr. X is posting inappropriate pictures to Victoria, okay? More inappropriate than usual. I mean, crossing a line, basically. So Mr. X's reputation is suspended for a week, say. That means I can't earn any money. That's a very efficient punishment. Like, I am really being, you don't know who I am, and yet you can punish me.
So so we had an experience as a, yeah, sorry, as a startup, so there are a few models using that at the moment, and say Facebook or Meta and their advertising algorithms and things like that. Like, we got locked out of our account this week as a startup, and because a bank queried, because they charge you like little clicks of the advertising because the bank queried a payment, and then we're hearing in the street that when that happens, like, because that's all done on like a reputational point thing, there's an algorithm. Then sometimes it can take 18 months to get unlocked. Like, how do you see that we can manage like the intersectionality of that, of the perception that those pictures were inappropriate? What if they weren't sent by him and he was hacked, or something like that?
But in this environment, that couldn't be true, because you're talking about an environment of credentials and DIDs and VCs, and I can't log in and send something as you. It just doesn't work like that. I don't have your private key.
If it's biometrically linked, and that's what we're seeing with credentials and smartphones and bricks. But to be correctly, so there is an edge case where someone could stand you in front of your phone or put your finger on Touch ID or whatever. But I think those are edge cases, and I think that's the point, that new technology makes the type of situation you're talking about, Lisa, much less likely to happen.
To be really honest, when we're doing the institutional due diligence for the Bitcoin ETF, and there was only a couple of signers, and I was one of them. And although we're in different states, the way the client was asking the questions on the due diligence, I was actually like, oh my God, do I really want to be in blockchain anymore? Because like, I might get kidnapped. Because it's not my money, right? I'm not rich, but if I'm the custodian of other people's money to that degree as a fund manager, it's quite scary when you think about those edge cases when people throw them in your face.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think, there's lessons here. We're talking about writing and Fableration. It's why I've got the books in the background and stuff. This is all very interesting for that space. But I know working in other industries, I mean, even for consultants, even in healthcare, even in finance, legal, there's all these other many industries that can benefit from the type of reorganization which we're talking about here. Let's have a look.
Well, I can give you a very simple and very topical example using Victoria's example. So one of the things I happened to read, I'm waking up early because my time zones are all messed up. So one of the things I was reading about this morning was there's a new book out by a woman who used to work for Facebook, who and Facebook are trying to get some sort of injunction against her from publishing it because it's supposedly the whistleblowing is revealing some things that they don't like. So imagine if I go to a book on Fableration and it says this is a book about Facebook, and I think that's so interesting. I want to learn more about them. But the book is only interesting to me if I know that the person who wrote the book used to work at Facebook. Okay. If I need to know who that person is, the book will never be published. They won't blow the whistle if they're going to be identified. But if they can't be identified as a Facebook employee, the book is valueless. So the new technology gives us a way out of this paradox where I'm reading a book that's by somebody who's written about something before, or used to work for Facebook, or has co-written with Victoria Richardson in other. I can select on characteristics, which it's a very different way of thinking about things. And I'm not smart enough to know what the public will actually do with this sort of thing, but it's at least worth the experiment,
I agree.
Absolutely.
I don't want to read the diary of a call girl by someone who wasn't actually a call girl. I mean, what would be the... You could cut that out. Lisa wasn't paying attention. You can cut that.
The diary of a nobody.
I was paying attention. I was looking at my notes.
That prove your reputation sort of thing is definitely enabled because we live in a world where either or it's kind of an impossibility thing, that description that you've got there, but in a world that has ZK proof type and digital IDs that enable us to I can see a bookstore where you can filter by that. Maybe it's authentic versus inauthentic authors, because maybe the inauthentic, and that's a bad word for it, but just giving users that kind of capability. I think it's amazing what it enables. There's other things.
It gets around the blockchain paradox, Mark, which is, in the very early days of the blockchain, lots of people, and I was one of them, by the way, thought that the transparency that came with the blockchain would mean new ways of operating markets, new ways of doing business. In practice, that didn't really work out, because it turns out a lot of people, banks, for example, don't particularly want transparency. That's just not how things work. There's another concept, which is translucency, which says if you have something on the blockchain which attests to the sort of reality of something, but not the actual thing itself, rather than having transparent transactions, you have translucent transactions. And I think this is a very good way of thinking about how to monetize things in the future. I can look on the blockchain and I can see that this transaction took place, and I can see that everything was above board. I can see that everything was done properly. It can be audited and so on. But who it was, I can't tell. There's no way of engineering that to violate the privacy, because if you have to put data on the blockchain which opens up the potential for abuse, then you won't do it in the first place. And yet we want the transaction ordering and immutability that comes with the blockchain. So I think the new technology offers us some way through some old paradoxes. But to go back to Vic's original point about why you would. So it has to be kind of harnessed in a way which allows people to exploit their creativity and doesn't, it's not a barrier. It doesn't stop them from getting in. It enables them to get
enables them. Yeah, it's really interesting because just listening to all of this, I sort of had a little aha moment about publishers and their role as that validator that the author did work at Facebook, or this is all of these things in here have been fact checked, and it'd be very interesting to see the evolution of that and how the AI and the technology really embraces it. Because I think about, like, we've got a little algo inside of Fableration that has all the criteria of what the AI thinks a good book would be, but that's been given to us and co-created with roundtables with publishers and writers and all of that. And by the way, one of those criteria is not genre. Everybody hates genres, and they will be blown up. But it'd be really interesting to, I'm just putting my investment management lens on that as well, which obviously is a very similar process. You're just validating a whole set of data. Very interesting to see how that evolves, because it could be a massive unintended consequence, right? That's what AI does. Yeah.
I think the other thing I'm super interested to understand whether you've thought about, Lisa, is, now I'm going to use a genre term, but I can't think of another one, is fan literature. So for a while, I was fascinated by the fact that people get so engrossed in a book and then they write their own parts to a book. And so maybe I should join your hackathon and say that's a feature I'd like to see. But it's such, and it's so powerful, and it turns readers into creators. So is that something that you're thinking about? And how are they rewarded and validated as well?
Yeah, I wish my CEO was here. He's a co-founder. He's a writer himself. And he is extraordinarily articulate on this topic. So I think me just saying it has been thought about a lot. And I think there's that grey, that's something that actually what I'm learning is happens in the grey. And so I think the idea of something like Fableration would be that the author could interact with that fandom and that fan, so to make it legit and to legitimize that. And that is definitely a use case that's being explored, because it's kind of an exciting thing, right? That you can, there is this moment where, as an author, when you're writing a paper book, you've got the whole process of publishing. It's kind of finishes when the book is published. What happens if the story continues post-publishing with the interaction from other people and together, and lots of writers may not be up for that, but what a great way to interact with your fans and to develop your brand. And one of the big problems, as I said at the beginning, was most of the authors I've met seem to be like, we just don't like marketing ourselves. And so imagine if that was a really clever way of marketing. I think that I'd love to explore that as a hack, honestly. It's a hackathon. I think I shouldn't say hack, because I think that's a really big use case, and I think it would be pretty expensive to build in the old product roadmap. So that's a good thing to co-create with all the young smart minds, right?
Would love to see something like that. Would really love to see something like that, and that's such a great idea. I think it really helps build that community. And just I
don't know. No. I mean, what if the fans? No, because I mean, suppose you've lovingly produced your novel with all the sort of characters in, and then the fans take over and make the characters do things, which are despicable, or you know what I mean? Like, imagine how that would feel. I don't know about this.
Within reason,
I see your point.
Not everything, like maybe it's that there's restrictions to something like this, and I guess it's choice, right? Depending on the author, maybe some authors want that and others don't. But just something you mentioned earlier, David, about on the translucency idea, and this is why I love like conversations like this in other industries that people aren't used to, because there's ideas that can come back to something that people might feel important. Translucency was really interesting because I think about the DeSci space. So for people that may not be aware, decentralized science, one of the problems that it does solve is that science has turned into this really capitalistic, monetary kind of game. Instead of publishing results, it's stopped a lot of researchers from publishing negative results, which would have helped the industry because they're not rewarded for the negative results. But what if you could publish those negative results that help educate and move the space forward without having to put your name on it? It was this whole reputation thing. They talked about being rewarded for it, but you still had to put your name on it. But if we use it in the right way and have translucency, I think it could help that space as well.
This actually came up during the pandemic, Mark, where there was a rather interesting case in Los Angeles where a group of emergency room doctors had an online group. And at the time, this is when the pandemic was just starting, and the exchange of information was really important. Nobody knew what was going on, and there was an urgent need to try to understand what was going on, exchange best practice. But of course, what people were saying in the group was only valuable to the rest of the group if they were an emergency room doctor. How did you know that the person in the group was an emergency room doctor and not, RFK Jr. or, so this thing about the worth of the information being bound up with the reputation that sits behind it, but in a way that is not through some Victorian notion of brand or through some kind of gameable review system. I think it's very transformational.
It's amazing. It doesn't matter what, every single project, every single thing in Web3, AI, blockchain, it just comes down to this validation piece, right? Every example just seems to come back to that.
It answers that, says who, and is that who a credible source in and of itself? Yeah.
Let's go back to and I think this is absolutely spot on. There's so much transformation that many can learn from this that we'll watch on in here. And put it this way, just to go back to the competition thing, I'm inspired and I want to enter the competition. I was speaking to my partner, and I've never thought about writing a book. I've written blogs, I've written a lot of articles, I've contributed. I've never thought about writing a book. We're in a world right now where my voice can be easily added, can be easily rewarded. I can do things with AI that, make sure it is my own voice. And I can also, edit all of that, like things that would have just been in the too hard basket before and are not impossible anymore.
Well, just imagine, just hearing you say that, obviously the use cases are so enormous, and really, I think what we'll be doing is moving away from books, and it will be stories and words, and the knowledge economy could be little sound bites, and perhaps you get paid for, it's 50 words, but it's 50 powerful words that 1 million people are willing to pay for. And that's really what the tokenomics and, shifting that, way that knowledge economy works can really, I think, open it up to so many more people and make it accessible. I mean, put your hand up here if you've uploaded onto, Kindle EPUB and not being published, and would never tell anybody that you've done it. Just me, maybe. But to Victoria and David's point, if there is translucency and you do, have an idea, you want to get road tested, and you don't want to get trolled on LinkedIn, and you might think you have a good idea, but you do get that genuine feedback. I think David and Victoria and I are three people who have innovated in our own ways in this sector, yet we are so bluntly honest with each other because we respect each other. But the ideas that come from that, of having that oh shit moment when you're wrong, but you were so close to being right, that it's the other person that gives you that friction point, that then gives you that breakthrough of that thing that you build, that is the thing that was needed to be built. I think it's really important to get that without and be rewarded for it as well.
So on honesty, Lisa, I've got a possibly unfair question for you. So will it matter if an AI wins your writing competition? And would you know? And what would you do about it? Would you say, okay, it's great, maybe it's Mark and his AI alongside it? I'm just really curious. Would you care? And
so
how will it be assessed?
So we've got an avatar, the AI bot that we use for the scoring of the books and things like that. We've lovingly called Phoebe. Phoebe has a social purpose because we've got an author that actually writes kids' books about bees, and Phoebe will be aligned to that. And every one of those books money will be donated to the bees, and we're a not-for-profit. So there'll be lots of blockchain for good in it. We would be gutted if an AI won, and I no offense to any AI bot ever. And so the judging process will involve humans in the end, but we'll have the readers elevating up to a final. And then I don't know how you can govern that though, and I think that's the world that we're moving into. And I'd like to think and honestly think that as judges, you may be judges as KOLs if you have time, but that we'll be able to pick up on AI. I laugh at sort of the younger people that I work with because I can tell when ChatGPT has written something because of the way it's been written and the how many dot points it does, and it's also perfect. It's like, people laugh at my typos, but hey, at least I wrote it. So look, yeah. I think it could happen. Would we be gutted? Yeah, of course. And hopefully, we haven't moved that far. And then, what is the knowledge economy? What is reading? If I'm creating a fiction and Mark has collaborated with AI and that fiction is really good and it takes me to the place that I needed to be, it's the same as watching a movie. The purpose of it is entertainment or knowledge, furthering knowledge, or, even something that allows people to improve their literacy skills. Does it matter? I don't know. It's a big open-ended question, and I don't. There's a lot of fear out there. That's what I will say from the writing community, and I've really picked up on that, and that's why I'm so passionate about. I am an impact investor. I am a responsible finance person. I haven't given that up because I'm, following a big passion project into creative writing. So I just hope that as humans, we always have that human filter, that honesty and integrity filter, and are able to detect authentic works. My only thing is, on plagiarism, right?
Yeah, that's true. I think you definitely have the risk of intellectual property violation if it is all written by an AI. And I support you. If you don't read, if you don't learn to read, you can't write. So I think it's a really nice way of bringing those two things together.
I was just going to say and we'll round out with some final thoughts just as we finish up the hour, but the detector bots that are out there that were early on, especially when ChatGPT just came out in November 2022, we immediately saw some detection bots out there. But the problem that they had was you could put in older writing that you might have had pre-generative AI, and it would still say that, 50% of this looks like it's written by AI. So there is a little bit of a worry when it comes to these things. It is harder to tell. A lot of universities are just changing the way that they test students more on oral knowledge and public speaking and presentation rather than the stuff that is a commodity. So,
and what happens when you actually write something? So I use AI as spell checker. I write it, spell checker goes to the commons, and then it comes back and says I plagiarized my own work because it was found online.
Exactly. I want to go around the room and get some final thoughts just as we finish up. Let's go back to you, David. What are some things that you just want to leave some people with from this great talk?
I think all I want to say, again, I don't have a crystal ball about these kind of things, but I do feel that the time has come for some more experimentation in the monetization of content. And I think if we're going to make the Web3 dreams about having an economy that isn't based on advertising and gatekeeping and data hoarding, it's time to start some experimentation. And so hats off to Lisa for giving it a go.
Absolutely. Victoria?
Yeah, I agree. As I said at the start, I think the time is now. I think there's really good infrastructure. Everybody's got a smartphone. And if I think back to my brother, he tried my song store. Would my bookstore work now? Absolutely. I think it will. Best of luck, Lisa. And maybe I'll enter the competition. I have to have a think about that.
Please do.
And Lisa, over to you, some final words for people.
It's interesting sitting here with some people who I respect so much in the payments industry. And I think Fableration, our catchphrase is words create worlds. And then now I'm thinking, words become money really. And so if, to David's point, if we can move away from advertising and have people's words authentically be fungible for money in a way that's different and can create economic advantage, I'm really excited to be part of a project like that. And then I guess I wouldn't be me if I didn't finish on, Bitcoin, not a scam, blockchain for good. We can really use this technology for good. And I hope that I really do hope, I'm very grateful for the founders of this project and the funder and the incubation from CloudTech of the donation of the Bitcoin. And I really hope that this gives more creators courage to build different things, and that people like me, David, Victoria, and yourself can support those new ideas, because to Victoria's point, the time is now, let's have a crack.
Amazing. Look, everyone, thank you for being on this podcast. Thank you for being inspiring and all the work that you each do. And we will see you next time. We'll put all the links to everyone in the show notes. So thanks for joining me.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for a great conversation. Thanks, Mark. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
See you.
See you soon.
The future's untamed. Blockchain blazing, carving new lanes. AI whispers in a silicon scheme. Dreams coded deep in a mainframe dream. Algorithms dance on this digital dirt. Crypto's buzzing while the